Welcome to the 34th SLiTHEr. I am happy today to be joined by Delmar Larson and Catherine Haas. We are going to be talking about LibreTexts, something that I've really enjoyed and did a SLiTHEr on previously, but they're much more knowledgeable than I am. And we're going to talk about the state of inorganic chemistry within LibreTexts for a little bit here. So I'm going to get out of the way and let you tell us what's going on and what you're looking for some help with.
Sounds great. I'm going to, I guess I can start that, and then I'm going to share the screen, and hopefully that goes to the wrong screen, right? I'm sorry, I'm on someone else's computer right now.
No worries.
Let's see if that works. That does not work. Okay, let me change, share a different screen. We're done. The mysteries of PowerPoint.
And other people's computers.
And other people's computers. Okay, so that should be viewable. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much, Chip. I appreciate the opportunity in order to present what we're doing with LibreText. And basically everything that's there. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Delmar Larson. I'm a physical chemist professor at the University of California, Davis. I'm also the founder and director of the LibreText project, which is a 14-year-old project that many of you know, and if you don't know, certainly your students do know, that is a central repository of what's called open educational resource material, freely available material that's out there. I'm joined with Catherine Haas, now at Duke University, and she's the inorganic professional on our team. So I can only fake it until I make it, and I'm not going to make it, so I will let Catherine come in with details. But I just want to give a little bit of a lowdown associated with the LibreText project, just so you can have a general platform, and that's kind of in there. Oh, that did not work. Did that work? Okay. So the LibreText project, like I mentioned, is 14 years old. The first 5 years of its existence, it was a volunteer-based project where faculty or students, primarily students during that period of time, would use it as a platform in order to be able to construct and build materials such that other students can capitalize on it, or other faculty to capitalize on it in order to build resources for their classroom needs. The intent was always to build textbooks. However, that is typically a very time-consuming process, and especially time-consuming when you involve students in the effort, because of a variety of sources, reasons of anyone. Most people can probably expect off that. Anyways, 5 years after that, we started to get funding. We received several grants from the National Science Foundation, and then about 3.5 to 4 years ago, we received a sizable grant from the Department of Education. We're also supported by the California Education Learning Lab, and that agency supports the building of the homework system, which I'll also comment on later on here. So let me tell you why I'm here, and why we're here, that is, and that's to ask for the community's help in order to build what we're doing. I'll comment on it later on, but of this Department of Education grant that we had that significantly facilitated the expansion of the LibreText project, we had a range of deliverables that we promised. One of the deliverables that we had was to generate all the textbooks for a suite of ACS certified backed bachelor's degree to support the curriculum around a bachelor's degree in ACS. So that meant that we had multiple sub-teams of construction efforts in order to be able to build each of these sections off here. We have another half a year pending another no-cost extension issue off of that, and we're very much interested in taking advantage of this summer in order to really shore up each of the textbooks that we've been building quite slowly, and obviously inorganic chemistry is the focus here. So let me start with the ask that we have here, and Catherine can join in if I am not saying this thing properly or if I'm missing something that okay. Again, Catherine is the lead of the inorganic construction team. So we need help. We need help in authoring content, remixing content, reviewing content, contributing existing content, and adopting content ultimately. think I got everything. Did I miss any other help issues that are on there?
I think you got it.
Okay, there you go. So, like I said, the intent is to make a suite of textbooks such that a student pursuing a bachelor's degree doesn't have to pay for a single textbook from start to finish, at least in chemistry. Now, the LibreText project is comprehensive. Chemistry is the most popular and the largest traffic-wise and content-wise of our libraries out there, responsible for 80% of our traffic. But we have ancillary materials to supplement other aspects that the students may be requiring, or definitely be requiring, like calculus and physics and other things like that. That's a different topic. So let me comment about why we're doing what we are doing, other than the fact that we got lots of money from the Department of Education. So there are two primary classes of issues associated with the current state of affairs with textbooks, at least from my perspective. The first one is the financial aspect, and the second one is the non-financial aspect. So anyone who's been paying attention to textbook costs over the last few years, and I know that many faculty don't get exposed to these sort of things, that up until a few years ago, textbook costs have been increasing at about 3 times higher rate than the general inflation. Essentially, it's been a bubble. And it's a bubble for a variety of reasons. And the primary reason is that there's a disconnect between who decides on the book and who pays for the book. And when you have a disconnect like that, then the typical mechanisms of capitalism in order to get resources or consumables down in cost go awry. It's the same sort of issue that it actually plagues our healthcare issue in America. Recently, it started to plateau a bit for a variety of reasons, and personally, my opinion behind that is that every bubble has to burst. It can't go on forever. It started to go on, but still exceedingly high. And there are a variety of reasons why that's detrimental to us as faculty. And because many of the times we don't pay careful attention to the sort of financial aspects that students have to do. The rising costs of textbooks results in a detrimental impact on the education of many students in those classes, particularly those that are not affluent in order to be able to handle the textbook. So they, instead of purchasing the textbook, they will then redirect those funds into things that are particularly more important to them, like housing and food and other things that I would argue are more important than textbooks, and they come to that same conclusion. But it has other issues. Students have reflected that they are more likely to drop courses because unable to purchase the resources for the textbook. They will select different courses, either fewer courses or different or specific types of courses based on the textbook requirements. Many of them reflect that they do a poor grade because they can't afford the textbook, which is almost a no-brainer consequence off of here. And many students have argued at least once they have not purchased the required textbook for the class because they just didn't have the money that's connected. So if you believe it's important for students to have the textbook in order to master the content in your class, which I think almost all of us would agree, then students not purchasing the textbook is detrimental to our mission as faculty in order to convey our learning objectives to the student. This is one of the reasons why we should be very cognizant, aware of the financial implications of these things. And naturally, tuition falls in the same category. However, students don't have the option of not paying tuition if they're going to be in your class. Well, they do have the option of not paying for textbooks. The second one is the non-financial aspect, which I oftentimes am far more interested in for a variety of reasons. And that is that the existing textbook infrastructure from the traditional static-based approach of take a book and you have the book and it's comprehensive and there's a lot more content in the book than you normally teach from, is a very stagnant approach. Textbooks should be scaffolding the pedagogy in the class. The pedagogy in the class should be dictated by the faculty member in that class or the department in that class to suit the needs of the department or the college in order to move that forward. When you have static resources in order to do that, it limits your ability to customize and generate your vision for how you feel that you want to teach. And I don't know any faculty member that's 100% happy with the book that they are using, with the exception if they're the author of the book that they are using in order to propagate, in order to work off of it. So everyone has a problem with that. Whether it's I don't teach chapter 5, chapter 9, and chapter 7, or section 0.25, 8.9, and this and that, you have the ability, if you have an open textbook, which is eventually where we're going to go, to be able to cut and rip apart a book in order to create the book that fine-tunes exactly how you teach. And that's beneficial for a variety of reasons. One, it's efficient. The second one is it also gives you the ability to customize the content in order to handle issues that conventional textbooks don't do. For example, DEI-based issues, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, or even culturally responsive pedagogy or localization. Now, if you can increase the any mechanism in which you humanize the content that we're teaching, where students will see some sort of reflection of their identity in the textbook, they're far more engaged in the material. There's plenty of evidence in order. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say that you are teaching a class somewhere in upstate New York. Well, if you're able to introduce issues like pollution and Love Canal, you're then able to make a connection that the students can actually see exactly something that's connected to where they are and how it is associated with the material that you're teaching. Or if you happen to be in Detroit and you're learning about the solubility of lead, let me phrase that, the pH-dependent solubility of lead. And now you have a connection to the people who can say, I now understand what's going on in Flint from a chemical perspective. And yes, it would be nice to be able to connect it to DEI, culturally responsive issues and things like that, which you can certainly do. The key point off of here is not necessarily one specific issue. The ability in order to customize a textbook, in order to enhance the engagement of the students with that material is a win-win situation out there, both for the students learning the material because they're a greater desire for engagement, and for the faculty because it has a better consequence in terms of our instruction. So let me, this is how I normally start the presentation, and that is with the LibreTexts mission statement. So this is the mission statement we have here. We are implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that is comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. So each of these 3 C's are particularly important in defining what we are, and each of these 4 terms in terms of how we use the platform are exceedingly important off of there. Now, normally when I give this sort of presentation to non-chemists, I go into a lot of details associated with each of these aspects, OER and customization, such as that. But I do want to make sure that this presentation focuses a bit more on, again, that ask and inorganic chemistry instead of finer details associated with OER and implementation. Legality and everything like that. If people are interested in that, I have no problem in order to switch over into that sort of discussion. So what does this mean? Well, community means basically you. So it's a platform, it's a resource where people can contribute to it. That could be faculty, that could be student, that could be external experts, but it's a community that we are building in order to be able to take this repository of content and move it forward. OER, or Open Educational Resource, has some debate in terms of exactly what is defined, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to say it means free or freely available, and that's out there. Comprehensive means no gap left behind. So from start to finish, left to right, up to down. We have a K-12 library, and we even have graduate level work, graduate level courses and such out there. We also follow no tech left behind policy. So if a technology that's open source is a particular interest for a specific faculty member, we'll embed it into our platform in order to be useful, in order to, again, move that project forward, the textbook, in order to be the textbook of the future. And that's where we're guiding and moving this thing forward. And lastly, is that the content that we have is curated, which means that we have the ability to go in and modify the content and update the content for a variety of reasons. For example, if it's incorrect, we need to be able to modify it. If it requires some context, it's also useful in order to be able to modify. There's lots of reasons in order not to have a static repository of content, like a set of PDFs, for example. That's out there. And the technology that we use behind that is a wiki, which is not surprising to many of you that may remember that the LibreTexts project used to be called the ChemWiki. So what is the LibreTexts project? Well, it has 3 sort of focuses connected to it. One is as a construction platform for the generation of these OER materials. One is as a dissemination platform in order to get those materials out to the community. And one is as a learning platform for students in order to capitalize on the material in order to enhance their learning aspects. Each one of these focuses are particularly important in defining who we are and how we actually move that forward. I'm looking for, I'm missing a slide here, so I'll just mention it in words. For those of you, like I mentioned, that may be unfamiliar with the LibreText project, your students are not. We have delivered 800 million page views of content since we started 14 years ago. Any day during the weekday, we deliver about 700,000 page views, and we're growing rapidly. Which means that content, if you want it to be distributed to other faculty out there, there is no better platform for doing so. Viper is a good second, but the LibreText project has mastered search engine optimization for a variety of reasons. And if you don't believe me, Google any chemistry topic and you will find this in the top level, unless it's some esoteric inorganic thing that no one cares about anyways. Okay, so anyways, so the infrastructure that we've established is what we call the Libreverse. And the Libreverse has the core content in our libraries, and then we have ancillary content or ancillary features with servers in order to support those things to provide value added component. Again, we're building a textbook of the future, and we're asking for help in order to do that specifically for inorganic output. So some of the ones, the only one I'm going to be talking about other than the libraries will be the Adapt homework system. Unfortunately, I can't show you the technology that we have here because it was taken down sometime in the last week that we were building for organic chemistry, but I will show you. So the aspect behind the LibreText project, I'm trying to make sure that I don't bore you guys too much with some of the finer details that's connected here. The key aspect that we're trying to do is to take content and store it in a central repository, but still have the benefit of letting people customize it. Again, what I was talking about before in terms of being able to increase the engagement between students and faculty. So we follow a mixture or balancing act between a centralized approach and a decentralized approach, where we keep content centralized, which gives us high fidelity, high stability, effective sharing. It's very efficient for using resources because it's centralized. And such, the detraction of a fully centralized approach is that you don't have local control. And some people, that means a lot. And other people, just having free access to content and OER is perfectly fine in order to be able to. And we have a mechanism in order to address that in a different way, different technology out there. The decentralized approach is the ability in order to implement a repository at a specific campus. That generates a fragmented ecosystem. So every campus will have a different repository, and it makes it difficult when one campus or one faculty member on one campus has generated something beautiful in order to get that out there to the community, because things are heavily fragmented and there's no infrastructure in order to share from campus to campus that's out there. OER is a heavily fragmented infrastructure or environment right now. It also requires independent resources. Every campus needs to support their own technology, whether it's a system administration, IT support, internet, computers, etc. And then consequently, it's inefficient. That's out there. So what we're doing is centralizing things and standardizing things. So we have our own standard in terms of format that we have of our content. And that means that we're essentially generating a bigger box of Legos, where each component, each quantum, each ligand, to use your guys' parlance, is independent, and you can grab and put them together in order to say, I'm making a textbook and I want it to look like this. And you sit down there and you combine them together. Now, yes, we have pre-made textbooks or pre-collections of these things, just like you go out and you buy the Star Wars Millennium Falcon Lego, and you can go about doing that. In this case here, you can take the Millennium Falcon and say it would look really great with X-Wings. It wouldn't, but let's say it did. And you could put that together and make that as your entity. So we're putting these things together, but what we need to have is enough raw material in order to make this textbook that's out there. Again, going back to what I was talking about before. But this building a bigger, better bucket of Legos is the central aspect of how we're curating and more specifically consolidating content within our infrastructure. Because it's openly licensed, anyone can pull from it, anyone can add to it, and anyone can edit to it subject to approval by our administration team in order to move this project forward. So we go through a lot of effort in order to take existing content and bring it in. So there's one of those asks here. If you have existing content and you would like to be able to contribute to your site, which I with appropriate attributions and backlinks and all the stuff that we give there, please consider us. By doing this, it centralizes the infrastructure, standardizes the infrastructure, and it makes all the content interconvertible. We build collections, aka books, although we do have collections of labs, for example, whether they're wet labs or dry labs, and we have a need in order to be able to generate those things because people need labs that's out there. And remarkably, almost every campus has its own set of labs that if we're had permission in order to consolidate, then we can actually really move it forward for people to benefit from that. It provides flexibility and curatability into our structure. So if something needs to be updated, everyone can benefit from that. Content can be viewed online. You go to LibreTexts.org. Content can also be printed up in, as one of multiple distribution channels. And this is a physical copy. This is my general chemistry honors book that's available. This used to cost $12 before the pandemic. Now I think it's $14 or $15 because everything is more expensive. It's out there. So I'm transitioning into inorganic chemistry where my comfort zone starts to wane here. Like I said, we have teams, our construction efforts, not just in inorganic chemistry, right? We have teams in general, organic, inorganic, analytical, physical, and biochemistry. And we even have been focusing a bit on introductory and GOB, just because we want to round out the collection, even though that's not part of the ACS curriculum, as you all know. So if you want to see our progress to date for inorganic chemistry, if you go to this URL, the chem.libretext.org, and you go into our bookshelves, there's an inorganic chemistry. And many of these things have been harvested. That's our term for integrating existing content into our platform, going through all the standardization and such. And some of them, and those things are books. Maps are what we call making a collection that follows the organization of a commercial book. So, for example, this inorganic chemistry book is Catherine's book, which is based off the Meisler, Fisher, and Tarr map. Not the content. The content's not in there because that would be illegal for us to do. But the organization we're allowed to be able to take and follow and build upon. And that's what Catherine decided to, the book that Catherine decided to go forward off of that. And then other people have started to contribute and move to that in different sources. And these all become raw material that's able to grab and put together. But if we don't have the material in order to combine things for the needs of this book, then we have to start building ourselves or look for other sources for those. So this is the a poor snapshot of Catherine's book, and I'm going to let Catherine, thankfully, explain her specific needs. Because you guys have this parlance that I don't understand. Actually, I know what it is, but whatever. I make more fun of organic chemists than I do inorganic chemists, so don't worry about that. Okay, I'll let Catherine explain what she would like.
Thanks, Delmar. So first of all, it's not my textbook. This is a team effort, and Chris Schaller and Stephen Context have written a lot of this content, and I'm trying to recruit Anna Gallo, who's also on the call right now, to help out with some of these chapters. So essentially, we have taken some of the resources that were on LibreTexts, and we've reused them and put them into a map of this textbook. We chose this particular textbook to map out first because I was familiar with it and I had some friends in other institutions that were using this book heavily. Okay, so right now the state of the text is that we have repurposed or rewritten from scratch content that did not exist on LibreText. So for example, in the molecular orbitals chapter, there was no material that existed that I thought was at an appropriate level for inorganic chemistry. And so I wrote that chapter largely myself. So I have put it right there. I don't know if that's the best place to put the original writing, but that's where it is right now. we have written mostly all the way through chapter 10. So I'll just say Chris Schaller wrote chapter 10 for us because there was not enough existing material for that chapter. And then Stephen Context wrote chapter 6, 8, and 9. I think there are still some holes in chapter 8 that we really need some help with. But beyond chapter 11, we need help. So that is mostly organometallics or main group chemistry for chapter 8. And then I think, I can't see it on Delmar's screen, but I think it's chapter 15. And so anyone who could help out by writing sections that don't exist or looking through the resources for organometallics on LibreTexts and help with mapping that content out, writing problems in any general area of inorganic chemistry. We really are lacking problems all across the board here. So we need problems to help students practice applying these concepts. And then we also need help with reviewing chapters, editing them and pruning them where necessary, giving us feedback, like, would you use this for your course? And if not, why not? Giving us feedback on this stuff, because right now, I think a lot of this is fresh material. And so it hasn't been through, many reviews. It hasn't had many eyes on it, except for my students. And then, any other students who might have used it. But that's pretty much it. This project is basically aimed at filling in this inorganic chemistry gap. There is actually a pretty big gap in inorganic chemistry in the OER resources that are available anywhere. And so when I came onto this project, I found a lot of general chemistry resources that were at a level that were too low for my students in inorganic chemistry. And I found a lot of PChem material that could be repurposed, but was at a little bit of a different level, a little bit more math than I would expect all my students to have. So that's what we need. We need that middle level pitched at inorganic chemistry students. I think that's all I have to say about this. My favorite thing is making images, like figures to teach students. We could use help there as well. There's a lot of different ways for people to pitch in. Delmar or Chip or Anna, any questions or comments?
Okay, let me continue on a little bit because I want to mention the homework system, which is meant to complement this. And I'm not sure, Catherine, if you've actually been involved in those discussions, and this might be a little bit of an introduction to you too. Maybe. So we knew from a long time ago that in building the textbook of the future, we needed to not only focus on the text and the images and the content that's in a traditional textbook, but we also need to have an infrastructure to handle the rating. And so in order to do that, we built a system with the support of both the U.S. Department of Education and also the California Education Learning Lab. And the system that we built is called ADAPT. And ADAPT is named ADAPT because it has adaptive learning coupled into it. It's a relatively simple form of adaptive learning based on static learning trees for now, although we're looking into expanding it with a dynamic learning tree based approach with an adaptive learning engine. But that is something that we're going to be focusing on later on next year if all the money turns out right. So the idea behind ADAPT is that it takes existing technologies and utilizes each of the technologies independently in order to be able to deliver the questions. So technologies that we have selected is WebWork, iMath AS, and H5P. These two are math-based technologies, which are ideal for handling very physical chemistry-like questions and many other types of questions that are auto-graded in nature if you're able to automate or make a little program up for each of the respective technologies and move it forward. H5P, if you're unfamiliar with it, is an interactive technology based on HTML5 that gives the faculty the ability in order to quickly make questions and propagate them out. That's out there. There are some issues and benefits and issues connected with each of these systems, but Adapt uses each of them independently in order to operate that. We're also integrating some organic chemistry approaches, and that same technology can be commandeered for inorganic chemistry using a combination of JS-Mol with the three-dimensional capabilities of the molecular construction open source system. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head. We still haven't fully integrated it. So you can ask questions on mix this and this, and then generate this, build the molecule behind that. That can be organic and inorganic. Inorganic is obviously a lot more complicated because you have a lot more elements that you typically do in chemistry. We're able to integrate spreadsheets. That's more important for statistics and accounting. And the ADAPT infrastructure can be used for clickers. So you can use ADAPT in order to interact with your students in class to get their feedback back and forth. And that could be useful, especially for larger classes that are out there. So I'm going to skip over this because you don't really need to see the details behind that. But I can... I'm going to try to log in if I can from this computer. Maybe I'll log in as Josh. Maybe I can't log in as Josh. Okay. The aspect behind ADAPT is that you can have questions both as open-ended, requiring a human to grade, and as auto-graded. So it's meant to be flexible in order to handle various levels of education, because when I teach my PChem classes, many of my questions are not well suited for auto grading. Just prove this, write this out, draw this. Very graphical, that is not very useful for a perspective on that. And there are lots of aspects behind this. If you're interested in the H5P instance, these are H5P problems. We go to studio.libretext.org. If you can go through a range of questions that you can grab and run right now. These things are mixed in with the other libraries or the other technologies in order to enable essentially grabbing questions. And in this case here, this is just a simple question dealing with radioactive decay, and just run with it there. This is from Tom Moore. More up in Wisconsin. My mind is not working very well. And so these are things that are used in the University of Wisconsin that's out there. So anyways, I'm starting to falter. So I will end with what I started, which is the mission statement. We're implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that is comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. Because this is a community-built effort, we need help, and that is what I'm hoping that the Viper community is able to contribute, either directly or indirectly. For example, if you're sitting on very valuable material that you want to get out to the greater community, we would love for you to be able to do that. So feel free to contact either myself or Catherine. My email address is delmar@libretext.org, and I can't remember Catherine's new Duke email address.
If you just Google my name, you'll find it.
If you just Google her name, you'll find it. So with that, I can finish this thing and address any questions that pop up.
I've got a few for you for sure. Captive audience. This is great. And thanks for sucking up to an inorganic chemist, even if you didn't know it. I thought you were using Jack Halpern's computer there for a second, and I would have been touched if you had been able to do that. But I'm guessing you said Josh, so.
Yeah, Josh is a physical chemist that just retired from Howard University.
Okay.
So he's at least in the chemistry community.
That's good enough. So first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us and letting us record this. I think I will make sure it's promoted to the community, and also for helping me through constructing the book I'm using in my sophomore inorganic class. I have a feeling that I might have made some extra work for some folks out there when I did that, because I'm pretty much a hack, and I went in and hacked a bit and would occasionally see corrections and fixes of things I had done. but let me kind of take that into a question. Let's say we have somebody who's like a little intimidated by, some of the interfaces with uploading stuff. Would you just accept someone dumping content in your lap?
Yes, very much. So
yeah, so that's what Chris Schaller did with chapter 10. So he didn't want to learn how to use the platform. So he just gave everything to me in Word documents and ChemDraw files. And so I just did the uploading for him.
Okay. That's awesome, because I think that's one of the things that would, scare people a little bit. I said, I learned enough to be dangerous in making some modifications and entering stuff, and occasionally entering mathematical equations hurt my brain a little bit. So I think that would certainly be of great use.
And if Catherine doesn't want to do it, we have loads of undergraduate students in order to facilitate that on my side. In fact, I have 100 undergraduate students in Davis, and their sole job is to harvest existing content.
Okay.
So, anything that you have, as long as it's open source. If it's handwritten notes, that's kind of painful, but otherwise, throw them our way, as long as it's legal. Whether it's even your graduate notes, I've gone through some of my graduate notes and started to replicate some of those things, especially when it comes to questions.
Okay. And if someone's dumping figures, pictures in there, is that something you'll check on just to make sure people actually have the rights to make those open source?
If the figure looks too good, we start to wonder. So we will ask questions, but invariably we ask those things. We do have several graphics designers, one volunteer who loves to replicate images. And he's been focusing primarily on our physical chemistry book, but I'm sure that he would love to transition into inorganic chemistry if given the opportunity.
Okay. So I wasn't surprised when you said, main group stuff was an area of need. I've served on a couple of ACS inorganic exam writing, and I assure you, when it comes to writing those questions, we have need there too. That was always a struggle.
Why is that? I mean,
I don't know. I think somehow many in the field are just into transition metals / non-descriptive chemistry nowadays. So it's a bit smaller pool. It's not to say there's not some great work being done out there, but I don't know. As a transition metal chemist, I can certainly say, I like transition metals. I like my d electrons, and we do fun things with them. So, going into kind of what you need in terms of review, what are you looking for? Formal reviews or just informal, like, hey, this section could use a little improvement, or as simple as I found an error here? Tell me what your dreams are there.
All of the above. So I think I have a wish list for different chapters, like different asks, I guess. In general, anyone who would look at a chapter and see something so if you see an error, please, we do not want that. So tell us. So when I look at chapter 1, I think it's verbose, but it's content that I just reused. And I personally don't have, I guess, maybe I haven't been alive long enough to really have this attachment to the history of inorganic chemistry. And I would love for someone who really loves the history of inorganic chemistry to look at that chapter and help me prune it, or tell me it's fine. I mean, I don't know. I think I would adopt this, or I would not adopt this. Like, let us know. And like, if you can let us know why you wouldn't adopt it and what we could change, that could be helpful. I don't want so I know enough about textbook authoring to know that when you get reviewer comments, sometimes everybody has a different style of how they would like to write it. So certainly some people are not going to like everything, right? Like, you can't please everyone, but that's what LibreText is wonderful for, because you can take it and change it for your own course, right? But things like errors, major structural issues, like I look at this and I hate it because of XYZ. Please let me know or let us know. And, we can take that feedback and decide to act on it and how to act on it.
Okay. But I think you hit on what I found to be just the great thing. Like, I would think the history of inorganic chapters should be incredibly long because, there's a lot of great stuff back there, but people can modify it. And if they're like, I don't want to talk about this much stuff, we chop it down. And, I think the idea of there's more there than you might need, great, because you can modify it as you see fit. I certainly did that with some of the chapters I imported in kind of my hack together spectroscopy class book I'm using this semester, where it's like, okay, that's too much detail, great, trim it down. So I really just loved that about it. And I've got one or two students who actually went and got the book printed, which is just really fun to see. I was like, oh, let me see that. What's it look like? And they've been so appreciative. The book is free. That's something they just really have been appreciative of. So I love this project. I'm still trying to convince my colleagues on our general chemistry text to move that way. And hopefully your homework system is something that right now is our hurdle. I know for sure.
Along that front, the homework system has been used for about 3,500 students so far.
Okay.
We have we've gone through all of OpenStack's questions and brought them in, made them auto-graded. We're checking them out, and basically became clear to many of the people, and I already knew this, is that the OpenStack's infrastructure is just not ideal, comprehensive, misses things, does things too topically, a wide range of different issues off it. And like I said, it gives us the ability to expand it. So we have been going through them quite extensively, in addition to a range of other flat world knowledge books, which was like the overall book in their questions. And those are more solid question to work off of, in addition to a lot of others. So I have about 20 of my students that are harvesting the questions for ADAPT. And like I mentioned to you, it's super easy in order to use it open-ended. So you just basically write the text down, you can copy it down there, and the students upload a PDF, and then you just basically can grade. You can look at question by question, look at the grading, just go through it like that. And that's what I use for a lot, although not all, of my physical chemistry questions, because I want them to prove things. I want them to show the steps that's involved. And auto-graded questions will never be able to do that, I think. I mean, and so like they're super great, super AI type of thing that's out there. So that means that a lot of the questions that, even for inorganic chemistry, you're not just looking for a flat number, except for maybe crystal field splitting type of thing, but you're looking for some sort of formalism thinking, and that requires a human in order to do. But this just facilitates it, so it's very efficient in order to go through the questions very quickly and just basically speed grade them. Or if you're lucky to have a TA, if you're at a campus that has TAs, then then it makes it easier for them to go through, and efficient for students to get their grades quickly. Which every student wants their solutions quickly or their scores quickly once they've submitted it. Oftentimes much faster than it's reasonably possible.
Now, have you seen any of what I might consider to be the ultimate compliment / insult, and that's stuff appearing on Chegg?
Oh yeah. About 2 months ago, Chegg sent me a cease and desist letter where they were insisting some of our content we took from them, which was clearly they took it from us because I know the authors that created these things. So I wrote them back and said no, and then I went to Twitter and I started to comment on it, and boy, did that get quite a lot of activity. So the next morning, it was just, we're sorry, hands off, it's not our fault, type of thing. But yeah, and so the intent is to make the all our questions that we can make algorithmic, so that every student has a different question. And then therefore it's a moving target of sorts in order to be able to just copy and paste it in, because, okay, fine, they copy something in Chegg or Course Hero and they see the answer, and they might see a worked out version of it, or they may not. So, and they look at theirs and theirs is different. So what do you do? Well, okay, they have to work through it, and that's exactly what we want them to do. So fine, there you go. But the whole issue of the fighting of Chegg is not an easy fight. My opinion regarding that, even though it's digressing a little bit, is that I think it's an exercise in futility to fight it. It is here, and it's here to stay. So the only thing we can do is essentially figure out solutions on our side in order to live with it. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm talking Chegg, not COVID here, but that may also apply to COVID. We just have to figure out a way in order to work within the boundaries, but because nothing is, everything can be compromised. The dark web has copies of everything. Students know how to access these things. We need to build an infrastructure in order to make it better, make it algorithmic, make it so that students don't see them. It constantly is randomized, go through these procedures in order to be able to implement it, just to kind of make it more difficult for students to capitalize on those resources. But like I said, and Catherine also mentioned, if you have homework problems that you're willing to contribute, it's openly licensed out of there. We could take them, we can use them. You can use the homework system for your class in order to be able to take advantage of them. We definitely need that. Labs are important. Worksheets are important. Everything that's this pantheon of resources that students use out there, we're very much interested in order to get out there. And like I said, I can guarantee it will be used. And I can give you traffic information, things like that. It won't be connected to, if it were generated from an NSF-funded project, then you're able to generate impact or numbers that you can then give back to your program officers. They like to have those sort of things, or promotions and merits. Everything. And speaking of physical thing, promotion committees oftentimes don't appreciate online construction efforts. If you generate a physical book and you submit that with your packet that goes in, they have a much easier time evaluating a book that you've constructed when they have it in their hand and they're able to flip through that. Just as a caveat for any of these sort of efforts that I've got. So, yeah.
Well, great. Thank you both so much for spending a little time with us. And I am going to twist some arms in the community and see if we can get you some content for those chapters. The organometallic one, of course, piques my interest. So you never know. Maybe I'll get spunky and think of doing something.
Spunk away.
Oh, great. Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Take care.